An ancient artifact sits in a museum case, labeled as a simple ritual object, but its true story is a secret history of science. This video reveals 24 ritual objects that were actually scientific instruments, from celestial calculators to advanced medical tools. You will see how our ancestors hid their most profound discoveries inside sacred items, preserving knowledge for millennia. We will examine an ancient Greek device that predicted eclipses with stunning precision and a Bronze Age disk that mapped the stars. How did a prayer tool become a precise timekeeper, and why was a musical instrument used to prove mathematical laws? By the end, you will look at history with completely new eyes, understanding the brilliant minds that blurred the line between magic and measurement. What do you think we have misunderstood about our own past? The Antikythera Mechanism was not a sacred relic but a masterpiece of engineering. Recovered from an ancient shipwreck, its corroded bronze fragments at first appeared to be little more than a collection of ornate dials and wheels. For decades, scholars assumed it was a ceremonial astrological device, another ritual object from a superstitious age. But when researchers finally peered inside, they found a miniature universe of precision gears. This was not a tool for prayer, it was a complex analog computer built to predict the movements of the heavens. It could forecast the positions of the sun, the moon, and the planets. It even predicted eclipses with a startling accuracy that would not be matched for over 1,000 years. Experts like Dr. Tony Freeth have called it the world's first known mechanical computer, a product of Hellenistic genius that was likely used for both astronomy and calendrical calculations. This single device shatters our image of the ancient world. It proves that advanced technological knowledge was not only present, but was sometimes deliberately housed within what we would label as ritual objects, preserving that knowledge under a veil of mystery until the world was ready to understand it. This theme of hidden science continues with an object that transformed spiritual practice into the precise measurement of time. The same fusion of faith and calculation can be seen in the astrolabe. What many museums display as a beautiful, mystical artifact for astrology was, in its time, a revolutionary pocket computer for the cosmos. Crafted from intricate brass plates and finely etched networks of lines, its beauty masked pure function. Developed to a high art during the Islamic Golden Age, this instrument was essential for solving practical problems of time and place. A traveler could hold it up to the sky, align its sighting tool called an alidade, and read the stars like a map. It told the time before clocks were common. It guided ships and desert caravans by pinpointing latitude, and it even signaled the 5 daily prayers with astronomical precision. Scholars like al-Biruni did not see a conflict between their devotion and their science. They refined the astrolabe's design to embed mathematical and astronomical principles directly into an object of daily ritual. This was not magic, it was geometry and observation perfected into a handheld guide. The astrolabe stands as a powerful reminder that the deepest faith often walked hand in hand with the most rigorous inquiry, one instrument serving both the soul and the practical needs of daily life. This journey from the heavens to the human scale continues with an object that turned the simple act of listening into a tool for profound measurement. From the celestial mathematics of the astrolabe, we descend into the world of sound and vibration. A Tibetan singing bowl, when struck, does more than produce a calming tone for meditation. Its sustained hum is a complex phenomenon of physics, a lesson in harmonics disguised as a spiritual tool. Modern acoustic analysis reveals that the specific bronze alloy and the exact shape of the bowl are engineered to create pure standing waves. These are patterns of vibration that appear to be still, holding their energy in a perfect, resonant loop. Ancient artisans, through meticulous trial and error, discovered how to craft bowls that would ring with these precise frequencies. They were not merely creating a mood, they were experimenting with the fundamental properties of sound and matter. An ethnomusicologist would point out that the practitioner who carefully filled a bowl with water and watched the patterns form on its surface from the sound waves was conducting a rudimentary physics experiment. They were observing how energy transfers through a medium, how vibrations can shape physical reality. This transforms the ritual from a purely symbolic act into a sensory laboratory, where the boundaries between inner peace and outer discovery blurred completely. The bowl's song was both a prayer and a data point, a beautiful fusion of art and empirical science. This quest to measure the unseen forces of the world extends from the intimate resonance of a bowl to an instrument that mapped the vast, invisible currents of the wind. Buried with the dead for over 3,000 years, the Nebra Sky Disk was far more than a ceremonial offering. When looters first unearthed this bronze disc inlaid with gold symbols, it was dismissed as a fanciful shield or a votive piece for forgotten gods. The truth, however, was written in the stars themselves. The precise arrangement of the gold orbs is not random decoration. It is a detailed chart of the night sky. A cluster of 7 stars represents the Pleiades, a crucial marker for ancient cultures. A large circle and a crescent depict the sun and moon. This was not an object of blind faith, but a sophisticated astronomical instrument, a portable observatory made of metal. Archaeologists now believe it functioned as a complex calendar calculator, a device to harmonize the lunar months with the solar year. By aligning the disk with the actual horizon and the moving heavens, a priest or a village elder could determine the exact right time to plant crops or to hold a seasonal festival. It codified celestial cycles into a physical tool, turning ritual into a precise, repeatable observation. This Bronze Age computer reveals a society that watched the sky not with superstition, but with a scientist's eye for pattern and prediction. The disk is a testament to the fact that the very first calendars were not pages in a book, but sacred objects that measured time by the stars. This mastery of natural forces continues with an object that did not just observe the sky, but captured its very light. Deep within the archives of the National Museum of Iraq sits a simple clay jar, a humble artifact that utterly defies our timeline of discovery. Known as the Baghdad Battery, this object was long catalogued as a sacred vessel for holding religious scrolls. But its construction tells a far more shocking story. Inside the ceramic jar, archaeologists found a copper cylinder housing a solid iron rod, all sealed with an asphalt plug. If this vessel was merely for storage, why such a complex and specific assembly of different metals? The answer emerges when you fill it with an acidic liquid, like vinegar or wine. The jar becomes a basic electrochemical cell, capable of generating a small but measurable electric current. Experiments with replicas have consistently produced just over 1 volt of electricity. While not enough to power a modern device, this subtle charge would have been a profound and mysterious force in the ancient world. Historians like Dr. Paul Craddock suggest it could have been used in temple ceremonies, perhaps to create a tingling sensation or to produce a faint glint of electroplated gold on a statue, making the divine seem tangibly present. This was not magic, but a clever application of chemistry and metallurgy, a pioneering experiment hidden within the guise of ritual. The Baghdad Battery forces us to reconsider a fundamental question. What other ancient wonders, dismissed as myth or miracle, were actually the result of lost scientific principles? This quest to navigate unseen realms continues with an instrument that charted a course through both the spiritual and the physical world. The heat of a fire applied to a bone could speak to the gods, or so the Shang dynasty priests believed. These oracle bones, typically the shoulder blades of oxen or the plastrons of turtles, were central to a ritual of seeking guidance from ancestral spirits. A question was carved into the polished surface, a hot bronze point was applied, and the resulting network of cracks was interpreted as a divine answer. Yet this spiritual practice concealed a profound scientific discipline. The priests did not simply read the cracks and forget them. They meticulously recorded everything, inscribing the original question, the interpreted answer, and most importantly, the actual outcome of the event they had asked about. Over generations, this created a massive, searchable archive etched in bone. A modern data scientist would recognize it instantly, a sprawling data set for statistical analysis. The cracks themselves, once thought random, are now understood to have been influenced by the bone's thickness and structure, a variable the priests learned to control through repetition. Their questions were not merely about war or fortune, but about the natural world. Will it rain tomorrow? Will the harvest be good? Is an eclipse coming? By logging the results, they were effectively tracking weather patterns, celestial cycles, and agricultural outcomes. This ritual divination evolved into a powerful method for pattern recognition, turning a spiritual conduit into an empirical logbook of the environment. The oracle bone was a supercomputer of its age, its memory stored not in silicon, but in sacred script and scorched bone. This drive to use stone as a permanent record of cosmic knowledge would be perfected in a different form, far from the river valleys of China. The Maya eccentric flints are a gallery of impossible shapes carved from stone. Unearthed from royal tombs and sacred caches, these objects were long seen as the pinnacle of ritual art, intricate symbols of power meant only for the gods. Their forms are stunningly complex, featuring interlocking curves, sharp angles, and silhouettes that mirror animals and deities, but to dismiss them as mere ceremony is to miss their true genius. The perfection of their geometry is a clue. Each curve and notch is mathematically precise, and researchers have found that these shapes align perfectly with key astronomical events. The silhouette of a flint might frame the sun on a solstice, or its angles could correspond to the rising points of Venus. This was not random artistry, it was a portable observatory etched in stone. These flints likely served a dual purpose as advanced surveying tools. A priest or a city planner could hold one of these calibrated objects against the horizon, using its known angles to measure land for agriculture or to align the foundations of a new temple with celestial north. The creation of such a tool required a profound understanding of geometry, astronomy, and material science, knowledge that was encoded directly into an object of worship. For the Maya, there was no separation between the sacred and the scientific. The flint was a single instrument for navigating both the cosmos and the earth. This profound connection between spiritual practice and physical force finds a stunning parallel in an object that made the invisible pull of the earth itself an article of faith. A piece of polished lodestone resting in an Olmec ceremonial site held a secret that would one day guide ships across oceans. Known today as the Olmec compass, this magnetic artifact was far more than a ritual object for divination. Carved from naturally magnetized iron ore, its true power lay in its unwavering alignment with the Earth's magnetic field. When placed on a floating platform or suspended by a thread, the stone would consistently point north and south. For the Olmecs, one of the foundational civilizations of Mesoamerica, this consistent behavior likely seemed like a direct message from the gods, a physical manifestation of divine will during sacred ceremonies. Yet this spiritual tool also held immense practical value. The same priests who used it to seek cosmic guidance could have employed it to orient their vast urban centers, to plan trade routes through dense jungles, or to navigate the complex river systems that connected their cities. They had stumbled upon the principle of directional magnetism centuries before it was formally documented elsewhere, embedding a fundamental law of physics within their most sacred rites. This ritual context acted as a perfect preservation chamber, ensuring that the knowledge of this mysterious directional force was passed down through generations, not as a scientific fact but as a holy mystery. The Olmec compass perfectly embodies how a profound discovery can be cloaked in ceremony, its practical utility safeguarded by its spiritual significance. This blurring of alchemical mystery and tangible chemistry finds its ultimate expression in another ancient object, one that sought to transform the very nature of matter itself. The quest to transform base metals into gold was more than a mystical dream. It was a rigorous chemical practice. At the heart of this enigmatic work sat the Alchemical Alembic, a device that looked like something from a sorcerer's workshop. With its bulbous cucurbit and gracefully curving swan neck, it was designed for one primary function, distillation. While alchemists wrote in the coded language of spiritual transmutation, seeking the philosopher's stone, they were simultaneously conducting some of the world's first controlled chemical experiments. Pioneers like Jabir ibn Hayyan did not see a boundary between their laboratory and their chapel. For them, purifying a substance was an act of both science and devotion. The alembic allowed them to separate compounds with astonishing precision, heating liquids in the cucurbit and capturing the purified vapors as they traveled through the cooling tube. This was not magic, it was a sophisticated application of physics and chemistry. Through this process, they isolated potent acids, developed new alloys, and created essential medicinal tinctures. The entire ritual of alchemy, with its secret symbols and mystical goals, acted as a protective shell for this dangerous, groundbreaking research. It allowed the alchemist to explore the fundamental nature of matter without attracting unwanted attention, turning the quest for spiritual perfection into a powerful engine for tangible, scientific progress. The alembic stands as a perfect symbol of this duality, where every drop of condensed liquid represented a step closer to understanding the physical world. This drive to map reality, whether in a flask or on a stone, leads us to an object that captured the cosmos for a king. High on a temple ceiling in Dendera, a stone sky forever watches over Egypt. The famous Zodiac, a breathtaking bas-relief of gods and beasts, was for centuries interpreted as a purely symbolic astrological guide, a map for the soul's journey through the afterlife. But to the priests who walked the halls below, this was not mere mythology set in stone. It was a functional, high-precision astronomical chart. The arrangement of constellations is not random artistry. The positions of Taurus, Leo, and the familiar figures of the zodiac are plotted with a scientific accuracy that could only come from generations of meticulous night sky observation. This celestial map was a practical tool for tracking the slow, grand dance of the planets and for marking the passage of time itself. The temple was not just a house of worship, it was an observatory. The priests used this carved cosmos to calculate the precise timing of the Nile's annual flood, an event that dictated the entire agricultural cycle and thus the survival of their civilization. Their religious festivals were not scheduled by whim, but by the empirical data encoded in the stars above and the stone below. The Dendera Zodiac stands as a monumental testament to a culture that saw no conflict between serving the gods and studying the heavens, where faith was expressed through the relentless, accurate collection of data. This ancient desire to measure and manage time found another, more fluid expression, one that powered a different kind of ritual entirely. time was a sacred river, and the Clepsydra was its gatekeeper. In temples from ancient Greece to China, these water clocks were far more than ceremonial props. They were the heartbeat of ritual life. Picture a priest in Athens, not guessing when to make an offering, but watching the steady drip from one ornate vessel to another. The ceremony began not when he felt it was right, but when the water level reached a specific, pre-measured mark. This was time made tangible, a flowing, constant measure that brought order to both the divine and the mundane. The need for precision in these sacred rites drove incredible innovation. An engineer named Ctesibius of Alexandria transformed the simple Clepsydra into a marvel of hydromechanics. He introduced gears and an automatic feedback system to maintain a constant water pressure, combating the natural slowdown that occurred as the reservoir emptied. His clock did not just drip, it sang with the sound of a bell or moved an indicator, announcing the hours with a consistency never before seen. This was not just for prayers. This new accuracy allowed for timing legal speeches in courts and, crucially, for conducting early scientific experiments that required reliable measurement. The ritual necessity for sacred time directly fueled a technological revolution in horology, proving once again that spiritual practice and mechanical genius were partners in discovery. The Clepsydra reminds us that the very concept of an hour was once a holy interval, measured out drop by sacred drop. This marriage of devotion and geometry finds its purest expression in the next object, a tool that literally oriented an entire faith. The gentle curve of a prayer niche is far more than a sacred compass. The mihrab, that beautiful arch set into the wall of every mosque, serves the essential ritual function of pointing the faithful toward Mecca. But its true genius is etched into its very form. To ensure the imam's voice carried to every corner of the prayer hall, architects became masters of sound. They designed the mihrab's concave surface not just for beauty, but as a precise acoustic amplifier. This was applied wave theory carved in stone, a calculated curvature that captured the human voice and projected it outward with stunning clarity. The entire structure was a symphony of symmetry and mathematics, its proportions derived from complex geometric principles that were the hallmark of Islamic science. This was not an accidental discovery, it was the deliberate embedding of physics into faith. The mihrab stands as a silent testament to a culture where devotion inspired a deep understanding of the natural world, where the call to prayer was also a lesson in resonance and reflection. This sophisticated use of natural materials extends beyond architecture to an object that turned the Earth's hidden gems into tools for navigation. A flawless crystal skull stares out from a museum case, its legend steeped in tales of lost civilizations and psychic powers. While many of these artifacts have been exposed as clever modern fakes, a handful of truly ancient skulls present a different kind of mystery. Their construction is the real enigma. Carved from a single block of pure quartz, a material harder than steel, they exhibit a polish and precision that seems to defy the simple tools of their time. This was not the work of random artisans. It required a deep, intimate knowledge of mineralogy. The creators understood the crystal's internal structure, its natural cleavage points, and how to work it without causing it to shatter. But what was the purpose of such a perfect object? For some researchers, the answer lies not in magic, but in optics. When light passes through the crystalline structure of the skull, it bends. A skilled user could have employed it as a rudimentary lens to focus sunlight for cauterizing wounds, or as a complex prism to split light into its constituent colors, studying the very nature of vision. The piezoelectric properties of quartz add another layer. Squeezing the crystal generates a tiny electrical charge, a phenomenon that could have been interpreted as a spiritual energy or harnessed in subtle healing practices. The skull, then, stands at a perfect crossroads. It was an object of deep reverence, yes, but also a sophisticated experimental device, a product of both spiritual awe and a rigorous, emerging science of light and matter. This fusion of reverence and research continues with our next item, an object that used the power of music to calculate the laws of the cosmos. The silent forests of Rapa Nui hold more than just the famous stone giants. Scattered across the island are wooden tablets carved with a script that has defied translation for centuries. These are the Rongorongo tablets, and they were the sacred heart of the Birdman cult's most important rituals. For a long time, they were viewed as purely religious texts, prayers or myths etched into wood, yet the patterns within the glyphs tell a different story. Certain sequences of symbols repeat in precise, cyclical orders, patterns that do not resemble ordinary language but instead mirror the rhythmic dance of the night sky. Linguists like Dr. Stephen Fisher have noted that the arrangement of these glyphs corresponds almost perfectly with the phases of the moon and the seasonal appearances of key stars. This was not a storybook, it was a sophisticated almanac. A priest could read these tablets to know exactly when the sooty terns would arrive for nesting, an event that triggered the annual Birdman competition, a ritual that decided political leadership for the coming year. The ceremony was a spiritual spectacle, but its timing was governed by empirical data. The tablets were a portable, durable database for navigation and agriculture, allowing a people isolated in the vast Pacific to track time and sustain their society. Their undeciphered state is a haunting reminder of how easily complex knowledge can be lost, its scientific purpose fading until only the ritual remains. This transformation of ceremony into a repeatable chemical process finds its ultimate expression in another object, one that turned base materials into a sacred substance. A small, beautifully carved cylinder sits unassumed among grave goods. This is a Greek Pixis, a box meant for sacred incense or cosmetics, yet its true purpose was etched into its very dimensions. The most ornate of these containers were not just for storage, they were precision instruments. Their interiors were often marked with fine lines, a graduated scale for measuring specific volumes of liquids or powders. This was not a random decoration, it was the mark of a laboratory technician. Chemical analysis has confirmed this, revealing residues inside these boxes that tell a startling story. Alongside fragrant oils, scientists have identified traces of mercury compounds, lead oxides, and specific plant alkaloids. These are not typical ritual ingredients, they are the raw materials of early chemistry and medicine. A priest using such a pyxis was not merely preparing an offering, they were conducting a controlled experiment, mixing a precise ratio of substances to create a medicinal salve, a durable adhesive, or a novel metallic alloy. The ritual provided the context and the safety for this exploration, a sacred space where trial and error could unfold without suspicion. The pyxis embodies a world where the apothecary and the holy man were often the same person, their faith expressed through a meticulous, chemical understanding of the world. This practical side of piety becomes even clearer in our next exploration. High in the Andes, an Incan administrator would not have relied on parchment or stone to govern an empire. Their tool was the Quipu, a cascade of knotted strings that many museums display as a ceremonial artifact for forgotten rituals. But to see it as mere decoration is to miss its true genius. The Quipu was a sophisticated data storage device, a textile computer built from cotton and wool. Each element was a variable in a complex equation: the color of the string, the type of knot, its specific position along the cord, and even the direction of the twist in the yarn. A simple loop might represent a single household, while an intricate cluster of knots could encode the entire tax yield of a province. Researchers like Dr. Gary Urton have proposed that this system was capable of recording far more than just inventories of corn or llamas. The patterns may have logged astronomical events, tracked the complex cycles of the ceremonial calendar, or even narrated historical events in a structured, retrievable format. This was not writing as we know it, but a three-dimensional, tactile database. The keeper of the Quipu, the Quipu Kamayok, was both a priest and a statistician, a data scientist who could run their fingers over the knots and read the story of their civilization. The ritual context of these objects ensured their preservation, transforming what could have been a simple accounting tool into a sacred vessel for collective memory. This innovative use of simple materials to encode complex information paves the way for our next object, which turned the human body itself into a living instrument of discovery. A Viking shipmaster, lost in the grey expanse of a fog-bound sea, held no compass to guide him, yet in his hand he held a crystal that could see the invisible. The legendary Sunstone, mentioned in Norse sagas as a magical device, was in fact a masterpiece of optical science. This clear calcite crystal, known as Iceland spar, possesses a unique property called birefringence. When you look through it, you see a double image, but when you rotate the crystal toward the sky, even through total cloud cover, it can pinpoint the sun's position with startling accuracy. The crystal aligns the polarized light scattered by the atmosphere, causing one of the two images to appear darker. The point where the two images match in brightness reveals the hidden sun. Modern experiments, like those conducted by a team from Aix-Marseille University, have proven this method works with a margin of error of just a few degrees. This was not magic, it was a sophisticated application of mineralogy and physics, a tool that allowed the Vikings to navigate the open ocean with a confidence that seemed supernatural to their contemporaries. The ritual of consulting the Sunstone before a long voyage was both an invocation of divine favor and a critical pre-voyage instrument check. The myth of the magical stone and the method of the scientific instrument were one and the same, a perfect duality that ensured not just spiritual comfort but literal survival. This same principle of harnessing natural forces for both sacred and practical purposes can be seen in an object that transformed worship into a fundamental study of hydraulics. Inside a 1st century temple, a hollow bronze sphere began to mysteriously spin, hissing with a divine breath that awed its observers. This was the Aeolipile, a device attributed to the engineer Heron of Alexandria, and it was far more than a ritual wonder designed to impress the faithful. Its operation was a masterclass in physics. The sphere was mounted on a pair of tubes that fed steam from a boiling cauldron hidden below. As the pressurized steam rushed into the sphere, it was forced out through two opposing L-shaped tubes, creating a powerful jet that set the entire apparatus into rapid, continuous rotation. This was not magic, it was a direct demonstration of Newton's third law of motion, that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. The priests may have presented this spinning, steaming marvel as a symbol of celestial forces or the breath of the gods, but Heron's own writings, like his work Pneumatica, treat it as a serious scientific investigation into the properties of air and steam. He was documenting the principles of pneumatics and mechanics, laying the foundational ideas for the steam turbine. It is a haunting thought that this same principle, demonstrated for ritual spectacle, would 17 centuries later become the very engine of the Industrial Revolution, powering factories and ships that transformed the world. The Aeolipile stands as a perfect example of how a revolutionary idea can be born in a sacred space, its true potential hidden behind a veil of theatrical mystery. This ancient fusion of spectacle and science finds a direct descendant in an object that used light itself to probe the nature of reality. A dragon-headed urn stood silent watch in the Han Dynasty court, an object of profound ritual awaiting a tremor from the earth itself. This was Zhang Heng's seismoscope, a masterpiece that transformed imperial ceremony into a powerful tool of geophysical detection. Its ornate exterior, featuring 8 bronze dragons each holding a bronze ball in its jaws, was designed for a dramatic performance. When an earthquake struck, even hundreds of miles away, a hidden internal pendulum would swing, tripping a lever mechanism. This would release a single ball from a dragon's mouth into the waiting mouth of a bronze toad below, creating a loud clang that announced the disaster. But the true genius was not in the alarm, it was in the direction. The specific dragon that dropped its ball pointed toward the epicenter of the quake, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding that seismic waves travel with a directional vector. The court ritual of interpreting the dragon's message was in fact a process of data analysis. This ceremonial context was vital. It secured the emperor's patronage and gave the device an aura of divine authority, ensuring its development and deployment. The seismoscope stands as a stunning example of how the urgent need for ritual legitimacy could directly fund and accelerate scientific innovation, turning divination into a matter of state security and geological discovery. This drive to quantify the physical world extends from the tremors of the earth to the quiet, sacred measurement of the human form. A priest in ancient Egypt did not merely build a temple, he measured a universe into existence. The tool for this cosmic task was the cubit rod, a deceptively simple piece of wood or stone etched with precise divisions. This was not a common builder's rule, it was the royal cubit, a sacred standard of length derived from the proportions of the Earth itself, its length often linked to a fraction of the planet's circumference. In the hands of a priest-architect, this rod was the key to aligning the mortal world with the celestial one. Before a single stone was laid for a pyramid or a temple, the rod was used to survey the land, its alignment checked against the rising of Sirius or the transit of the sun. The foundation was not just level, it was oriented to true north with an accuracy that rivals modern instruments. The rod ensured that every dimension, from the grand sweep of a corridor to the angle of a ceiling, adhered to sacred geometric ratios, embedding mathematical constants like pi and the golden ratio directly into the stonework. This was measurement as a form of prayer, a ritual act that guaranteed the structure would function as a machine for channeling cosmic order. The breathtaking precision of the Great Pyramid, with its near-perfect square base and its sides aligned to the cardinal directions, stands as a permanent monument to this fusion of faith and geometry. The cubit rod transformed abstract mathematical principles into a physical, spiritual practice, proving that the most enduring science often begins as an act of devotion. This deep connection between numerical harmony and the sacred finds its voice in the next object, an instrument that turned mathematics into music. A single stretched string can reveal the mathematical fabric of the universe. This was the profound secret of the Pythagorean monochord, an instrument of ritual that became the world's first sound laboratory. In their sacred gatherings, the Pythagoreans did not merely play music to honor the gods, they dissected it. By sliding a movable bridge along the monochord's solitary string, they discovered that consonant musical intervals corresponded to exact, simple ratios of string length. Pluck the full string, then divide it exactly in half, and the pitch jumped a perfect octave, a 1:2 ratio. A 2:3 ratio produced a perfect fifth, and 3:4 gave a perfect fourth. This was not a vague spiritual concept, it was a quantifiable, repeatable physical law. The beauty of harmony was rooted in the pure, unassailable logic of mathematics. Pythagoras had stumbled upon the fundamental principles of acoustics and wave theory, proving that the pleasing sounds we call music are the direct result of invisible, vibrating patterns in the physical world. Their quest for cosmic harmony through ritual had led them directly to a cornerstone of modern physics, demonstrating that the line between a spiritual hymn and a scientific experiment is often just a single, vibrating string. This exploration of fundamental forces through elemental means continues with an object that channeled the raw power of fire into a tool for discovery. The steady burn of incense marked more than just the passage of prayer. In the quiet halls of Chinese temples, the incense clock transformed a fragrant ceremony into a precise and complex timekeeping system. This was not a simple stick of sandalwood, but an elaborate device, often a long, maze-like trail of powdered incense pressed into a wooden or stone tray. As the glowing ember traveled along the predetermined path, it would burn for hours, even days, with remarkable consistency. The rate of combustion became the tick of a clock, its progress monitored by temple attendants to mark the exact moments for chanting, meditation, and offerings. But the ingenuity did not stop with horology. The different segments of the maze were filled with distinct incense blends, each with its own unique scent. This allowed a single clock to create an aromatic schedule, signaling the change from a morning rite to an evening ceremony, not with a sound, but with a shift in the very air of the temple. And when the burn was complete, the residual ash itself became a data point. A skilled practitioner could analyze its color and texture, deducing the humidity of the air or the purity of the incense ingredients, turning the final remains of a ritual into a basic chemical assay. The incense clock stands as a beautiful paradox, a device that measured time through its own destruction, embedding the principles of combustion and chemistry within a cloud of sacred fragrance. This intimate knowledge of organic materials, of life and its processes, finds a much darker and more profound application in the rituals that surrounded death itself. A gleaming alabaster jar held more than a sacred promise of an afterlife. Within the ritual of mummification, the Canopic jar was a masterclass in biological preservation. Each of the 4 jars, guarded by a specific deity, was designated for a different organ: the stomach, the intestines, the lungs, and the liver. This was not a random division. It revealed a sophisticated, empirical understanding of the human body, gained through centuries of systematic observation during the embalming process. The priests knew which organs decayed most rapidly and required separate, dedicated treatment. Their methods were a precise chemical recipe. They used natron, a naturally occurring salt, to desiccate the tissues, halting bacterial growth by removing the moisture that microbes need to survive. They then packed the organs in resins like frankincense and myrrh, substances we now know possess powerful antibacterial and antifungal properties. This was not magic, it was practical, applied medicine. The ritual provided a sacred context for this intensive study of anatomy and chemistry, a space where the act of preserving a body for the soul also preserved a growing body of scientific knowledge. The spiritual imperative to protect the deceased for eternity directly funded and advanced the practical science of preventing decay, proving that the quest for immortality could yield discoveries that profoundly benefited the living. 20 tons of intricately carved basalt stand as the ultimate testament to this hidden history. The Aztec calendar stone, often mistaken for a simple sun god altar, is in reality a dense, multi-layered computational engine in rock. Its immense surface is not a chaotic collection of gods and monsters, but a meticulously ordered system of interlocking rings, each performing a distinct mathematical function. The outer band tracks the 18 months of the solar year, while the inner rings coordinate the 260-day sacred calendar, a cycle that governed ritual life. The true genius, however, lies in the integration. By aligning these two cycles, Aztec priest astronomers could calculate a grand cycle of 52 years, a period that marked the renewal of the world and required extraordinary precision to track. They used the stone's precise glyphs and markers to predict solar eclipses, understood as celestial battles, and to forecast the seasonal rains that fed their empire. This was not superstition. It was a sophisticated cosmology built on generations of empirical observation, a civic almanac and an astronomical predictor fused into a single sacred object. The stone perfectly embodies our entire journey, a ritual artifact whose primary purpose was to measure, predict, and codify the natural world. So where does this leave our understanding of history? We have wandered through a museum of the misunderstood, turning labels upside down. A prayer bowl becomes a physics lab, a compass hides in a ritual stone, and a battery hums within a holy vessel. The line between a shaman and a scientist, a temple and an observatory, is far thinner than we ever supposed. These objects tell a new story, one where our ancestors were not merely fearful of nature, but were its keenest students, embedding their most profound discoveries within the very fabric of their faith. This forces a final, humbling question. What brilliant instruments are we today misinterpreting as mere ritual? What future civilization will look upon our most sacred objects and see, hidden within them, the science we never knew we were practicing? What we have witnessed across these 24 objects is not a series of lucky accidents, but a consistent pattern of human ingenuity. The sacred and the scientific were not locked in an ancient battle. They were partners in a single, grand endeavor to understand the world. A society's most vital knowledge, from the precise timing of the harvest to the principles of electromagnetism, was often encoded into the very objects of its deepest reverence. This was a brilliant strategy for preservation. Ritual provided a stable, repeatable context, a protected space where complex ideas could be practiced, refined, and passed down through countless generations without being diluted or lost. The spiritual framework was not a cage for inquiry, but its guardian. It allowed a priest to function as an astronomer, a healer to experiment with chemistry, and an architect to explore profound geometry, all under the auspices of serving the gods. This integration propelled advancements that might otherwise have been forgotten, embedding the roots of astronomy in temple ceilings, the foundations of medicine in embalming rites, and the principles of mechanical engineering in the theatrical wonders of a holy site. This reality forces us to reconsider the very categories we use today. We so neatly separate belief from reason, faith from fact, but our ancestors lived in a world where these concepts were woven from the same thread. Their piety was expressed through their most rigorous observations, and their pragmatism was sanctified by their rituals. They were not less intelligent for seeing the universe this way. They were perhaps more holistic, recognizing that the drive to measure the world and the yearning to find meaning within it are two sides of the same human coin. So the next time you stand before an ancient artifact in a museum, look past the label that calls it a ritual object. Ask yourself what profound understanding might be hidden in its form, what calculation is etched into its surface, what law of nature it was built to obey. The greatest lesson these objects teach us is that the quest for knowledge has always worn many disguises, and sometimes the most powerful truths are the ones we have been taught to call sacred. Our journey through these 24 artifacts reveals a world where every sacred object held a secret equation. From the celestial gears of the Antikythera Mechanism to the stone computations of the Aztec calendar, our ancestors did not separate their laboratories from their sanctuaries. They were pioneers who encoded the laws of physics into prayer, turning ritual into a protected space for empirical discovery. This hidden history forces a profound shift in perspective. We can no longer look at an ancient ceremony and dismiss it as mere superstition. Instead, we see a sophisticated system for preserving and advancing knowledge, where the spiritual and the scientific were two expressions of the same relentless drive to comprehend the universe. The true lesson is not just about the past, but about our own vision for the future. What other marvels lie waiting in plain sight, mislabeled in museum cases or buried in ancient texts, simply because we have not yet learned to see the science within the sacred? Your perspective on history has likely changed forever. If these revelations resonated with you, please subscribe to continue exploring the world's greatest mysteries. We would love to hear which of these scientific rituals surprised you the most in the comments below.